Happy early Merry Christmas. Glenn Stein, Realty Executives here. Very interesting week this week. Actually, I think a real positive week. I think ever since the beginning of this year, actually probably beginning of second quarter of 2022, there's been this doom and gloom. The market's going to crash and everybody's going to die, which everybody will die eventually. But, I think there's been this feeling like, okay, market is crashing. Oh my gosh, lots of fear in the system. We in the, here at Realty Executives, obviously located in the Villages, right on 466, right near the corner of Buena Vista across from Laurel Manor. We experience a very much a slowness in the marketplace. And one thing that I think is really important is just being honest and upfront that what we're seeing is what we're seeing and not sugarcoat it. And we did see a slowness in the marketplace. And I think things have picked up, and it seems like related to a couple of things, related to the elections being done, related to interest rates over the last 4 weeks dropping, mortgage interest rates dropping. And I think, stock market doing a little bit better, a little bit more positive news, a little bit more time, from the time that things started to slow down. So a little bit of history developing. So I think people are feeling a little bit more comfortable in buying. I'm not saying everybody's jumping in with the same fervor that we saw, 8 months ago, 12 months ago, but people are buying, a little bit more. Not that, and they stopped buying because there's this, sometimes people think, we hear this even from sellers and different people, nobody's buying. Well, there's always someone buying because they want to get to retirement. They want to get to the next stage. They want to move on with their lives. And so there's always someone buying and selling, and it doesn't matter the market. And I was actually reminded of this. My first home that we bought, 1997 or 1998, I believe, had an 8.5 interest rate. And I'd forgotten about that. Like, okay, it's not what some people, when they bought in the late 70s, and we did this poll. And if you want to do it again, by the way, it'd be great. If you bought a home with a higher interest rate than 10, put it in the chat. Some of you did that. We did that a couple of months ago. It wasn't in the 10, 12, 18% range, but it certainly was a lot different. 8.5 was different than 2.5%, which is what we saw, earlier part of this year. And that's what really pushed the marketplace. So, but what we did see, and I've got some notes here that really, kind of indicated a really positive week where, the Fed essentially said that they're only going to raise, we're going to go by 25 basis points, which is, much more conservative than what they've been doing the last 3 quarters of, actually 4 straight quarters of 75 basis points, which I think is a true indication. What they're seeing is that inflation is coming down. Now, you can get into a lot of different scenarios of, whose fault, and I don't know that that's relevant at the moment. But what is relevant is that what they're seeing is that inflation is coming down. And I'm looking at it here where, okay, if you look at the Fed, and you can Google this, by the way, the Fed inflation forecast in December of 2022, this year was 4.8, which is, that's where it's at. They're anticipating that inflation will be, 3.5 December of 2023, and then in 24, 2.5, and then in 2025, the end of 2025, 2.1. So it tells me a couple of things. What it tells me is okay, they feel like they've pushed the needle as far as they want to go, as aggressively as they want to go. It doesn't mean that they're not going to push forward on interest rates and going higher, but they're nearing the peak as far as how far they want to push it, and they're probably going to keep it at these levels for the next 3 to 4 years, right? I think so they need to fight inflation. They've talked about this, and what they've done, their weapon of choice has been, let's raise the interest rates, which is obviously impacting mortgage interest rates and obviously impacting what happens here in the Villages because of stock market. There's so many things that are impacted by that. And because of that, it's slowed down our real estate market everywhere, but also specifically here in the Villages. So, if we're looking at the 3 to 4 year, what's the real estate market going to look like? I think it's probably what we're seeing right now, which is, creeping up of inventory. And right now, by the way, 305 properties are on the market in the villages on MLS, 305 properties. So we've seen a steady increase, but not a dramatic increase. It's almost like, boiling water, and, it slowly gets hot and hotter and hotter and hotter until it boils. That's what we're seeing in inventory. We have seen an increase in the number of properties that are selling. It seems like more and more people are interested in jumping into the marketplace. And I think it's because they're feeling a little bit better about what's going on overall. I think that's pretty much what we're seeing overall. The other thing that we're seeing is, lower interest rates. Like I said before, last 4 weeks, we've seen a decrease in the interest rates, the mortgage interest rates, which I think is really, I think it's good news for the market, for sure. Some people are saying that, we may see interest rates go into the fives, mortgage interest rates. I don't know about that. And what they're saying is, go into the fives by beginning of the year, first quarter of next year, because mortgage rates as of this moment have jumped up again. And it's not terribly surprising, because we were seeing rising, the Fed interest rate was going up and mortgage interest rates were going down over the last 4 weeks. So that was a little bit of a surprise. I think that was more of a temporary blip. And now I think we're approaching 7 again, 6.75 to 7. So it wouldn't be surprising if we went to 7 and 7.5 in this process. But so, I think that actually has provided a nice buying opportunity for people that are using mortgages. But I think what the point here is, I think the punchline and the mic drop is basically, good news, saying that the interest rate hike that the Fed has employed not only has raised interest rates, but it's actually working as far as inflation goes, right? And I think that's been, I think positive news, because that means that, okay, it's not like the end is in sight, but it does mean that their aggressive behavior, I think, has been working. Now, last 7 days, we're looking at new listings, 35 new listings on the market in the villages. Sold closed properties, 25. That's a little bit light. And pending properties, 20. So that's a little bit light if you were to look at, compare it to any week within the villages in 2022. But the thing to realize is, wait a second, it's December 16th. And we are, not everybody, but most people are in Christmas mode. So I think that's something to consider as well. That's something to look at. And I'm anticipating it being very similar to that in the next couple of weeks. And probably the first week of January, then we're looking at 3 weeks from now, when we're talking about the second week of January, then that should be a real indicator. I'm expecting things to flow a little bit stronger, of course, because we're in our season. We're seeing more and more people. We're booked as far as rental properties, seasonal rental properties. I think one came on briefly because someone just closed on something and wanted to rent it out for season, and it has furniture. So if you're interested in that, if you're looking for a seasonal rental and you want to be here for the winter, January, February, March, call the office. They're going to close in about 20 minutes, or call them on Monday, 352-753-7500. But that gives you an outlook. I think there's a lot of positive things that are happening in the system right now. Interest rates, basically rising a little bit after dropping, for like 3 to 4 straight weeks. We actually saw a rate drop all the way down to 6.28. And now it's gone up a little bit. So I think people are feeling a little bit better. The other thing that we saw recently was the CPI. So if you can Google this as well, consumer price index, that essentially we saw the last 2 months, we've actually seen the CPI go down, which I think is super favorable. So I think good news in the system, not that things are going to change in 5 minutes, but I think definitely positive things. So if you have questions, I'd like to hear your opinions on what we're seeing as well. You can leave that in the chat. And you could also connect with me personally at 352-572-3796. And hope everybody just has a great weekend. And we'll be doing another program next week just before Christmas. If you've got special Christmas plans, put that in the chat. Let me know where you're going if you're going anywhere special.